Welcome to this presentation looking at what is sensory overload by the Specialist Education Service. We'll be looking at what is sensory overload, what can it look like, and some strategies to help. First of all, we're looking at the senses and the 5 senses we're all familiar with, which is sight, smell, touch, taste, and hearing. We all have our favourites for these. That could be the smell of coffee or baking bread, could be the sound of our favourite music, could be the taste of chocolate. We also have ones we really don't like. This could be a certain smell of glue or certain foods. It could be a sound, so it could be scratching on glass. It could be the taste of a medicine. So when sensory overload can happen, can be any time when the information from our senses becomes overwhelming and it's too much for us to process. It may be only one sense that's overwhelmed, which increases sensitivity in the others, or it could be a combination of some different senses that are all coming in with input at the same time. Before our children become completely overwhelmed, there may be signs that they're beginning to feel uncomfortable in a situation, which we can look out for. So these can be restlessness, irritability, becoming overexcited, having anxiety levels which are increasing. They could cover their ears or eyes, and they could have a sensitivity to light, touch, smell, and noise, and these can all begin to increase. So looking at what a sensory overload might look and feel like. During the sensory overload process, your child will feel overwhelmed and their bodies will be flooded with chemicals. This can result in one of 3 states. They may want to escape and get themselves to somewhere where they feel safe, which we call a flight response. They may become aggressive, which may involve throwing objects, shouting, and becoming physical with you and with others in their peer group. This is called the fight response. Alternatively, they may become very withdrawn and quiet and even be unable to speak or move. We call this the freeze response. So looking at some strategies to help your child manage their sensory overload, we would look at recognizing triggers in your child's behavior and help them recognize sensory overload for what it is. We would teach them the language so your child can name what is happening to them and increase their vocabulary so they can share with you how it's making them feel. We can reassure them that how they feel is valid and normal, but it's also a temporary state. We would validate their feelings and explain to them how certain situations make us feel so we can model to them how we deal with the emotions of a sensory overload ourselves. We could encourage them to use breathing techniques and relaxation techniques to help them manage these feelings. We may have a comfort object that they can hold in their hand, which is something they're familiar with and they associate with a calm and quiet space. We can work together with our children to plan ahead and discuss with them that there may be a time when they feel overwhelmed, and we can work on a plan to have in place for them so it's something they can do in that situation. We can identify ways that our children can let us know that they're beginning to feel overwhelmed. This could be a word or a sign that they can use that we both recognise. We can also identify areas that are quiet and calm, where they feel safe, and they can access these if they feel that they're entering a sensory overload stage. So some strategies to help with a sensory overload to do with noise. We could move away from the busy and noisy place. We can find a calm spot and wait until our children feel able to rejoin, or we can make the decision to leave if it's going to be too overwhelming for them. We may find that our children just need some time to self-calm, so we reduce our conversation, we just cohabit with them, and we're there for them until they're ready to talk. We may use ear defenders or headphones, which can have a dual purpose of either blocking out noise or listening to calming music. And we can ask if the music or noise in the environment can be lowered, which may help our children manage. So looking at some strategies to help with sensory overload relating to touch. There are different sensitivities to touch, so your child may like a gentle touch or a firm touch. You can consider if your child may be too hot or too cold, and can we reduce or increase the temperature? Is their clothing causing an increase in sensitivity? There can be issues with labels in certain clothes, other clothes too tight or too loose. There can also be issues around certain fabrics and textures. If your child likes the gentle touch, you can provide a piece of fabric that they like to stroke or hold, and this can help them self-calm and self-regulate. If they prefer a firm touch, you may provide them with objects such as a squeezy ball, a stretchy tube, or some bubble wrap, which again can help them self-regulate. Weighted blankets can also be used, as they are purpose-made to help children feel calm, and they can help reduce stress levels. Some strategies for a sensory overload related to smell. If possible, you can move outside to fresher air. You can have a cloth or an object with a smell that your child likes, which they can use to cover that unpleasant smell and again help them self-calm. And have an awareness of the smells your child finds unpleasant and try and reduce these in the home where possible. Some strategies to help with a sensory overload relating to sight can be dimming the lights or wearing sunglasses, as bright light can be very overwhelming. We can pull the curtains or blind. We can use natural daylight or full spectrum lighting systems to regulate the amount of light that our children are exposed to. We can adjust brightness level on TVs, computers and games consoles. We can be mindful of visually busy environments where there's a lot of sensory input, and we can plan with the child how we're going to try and regulate and cope with these. And finally, looking at other senses, there are 3 lesser known senses that can also affect how our children self-regulate. There's proprioception, which is how we know where our bodies are in relation to our surroundings. And for example, this can have issues with being able to kick or catch a ball or touch our noses without looking. There is a vestibular sense, which helps us plan our movements and maintain our balance. This can have an effect of causing clumsiness and can affect motor skills. And engaging the muscles, taking part in physical activities can help to self-regulate. For example, jumping on a trampoline, pushing against a wall, or stamping our feet on the ground. And lastly, there's interoception, which is how our brain knows what's going on inside our bodies. It transmits the feelings of, for example, feeling hungry, when our heart is beating fast, or when we have a sensation of nerves or butterflies in our stomach. So if our children are struggling with this, they may need checking to see if they're hungry or thirsty, or if they're feeling ill or in any pain. Thank you for listening.